I was raped when I was 9 by a cousin and never told anybody until I was in my late 20s. Not only was I raped by a cousin, I was raped by a cousin and then later sexually molested by a friend of the family and then by an uncle. It was just an ongoing, continuous thing. So much so that I started to think, this is the way life is. As a result of that, got myself into a lot of trouble and believed that I was responsible for it. It wasn't until I was 36 years old, 36, that I connected the fact, that's why I was that way. I always blamed myself. Even though intellectually I would say to other kids, I would speak to people and say, the child is never to blame. You're never responsible for molestation in your life. I still believed I was responsible somehow, that I was a bad girl. The same thing that in some cases causes a child to be abused is the same thing that causes you to be abused as an adult, is the same thing that in your adulthood that allows you to never be able to say no to people. And I realized that I was the kind of child who was always searching for love and affection and attention. Unfortunately, there are adults who will take advantage of that and misread your intentions. Part of the process for me as an adult has been to come to recognize that my inability as an adult female to say no is the same thing that caused me to be victimized as a child. Many times I would get myself into situations as an adult where I didn't want to say no because I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I didn't want to say no because I didn't want anybody angry with me. I didn't want to say no because I don't want people to think I'm not nice. And that to me has been the greatest lesson of my life, is to recognize that I am solely responsible for it and not trying to please other people, not living my life to please other people, but doing what my heart says. All the time. That's the biggest lesson. The other big lesson for me has been to learn not only do you have the right to do whatever you want, you have the right to change your mind. Like I'd say, but I have to because I said I was going to do it. And then later you think about it and you realize I shouldn't be doing this, but I said I was going to do it and I don't want to make anybody upset. It's taken me 37 years to figure that out, to get that straight. I think, oh my goodness, if I had learned this 20 years ago, all the time I could have saved. Look where I could have been. Look, I don't know if men have this problem. I think men who are, for instance, abused sexually or physically, that it manifests outwardly in some way, that their anger and their rage takes on a different kind of direction. I think women to a great extent, and I know many, many women who were sexually abused, internalize it and then allow themselves to abuse themselves later on in life. You just don't allow yourself to be all that you can be. Whereas a man will make it more external and will be angrier. I don't believe that anything happens without a reason. And in order to believe that is the truth, you have to believe it in all circumstances. If you're going to take responsibility for your life, then you have to take it in all forms. I certainly wish that I had been the kind of child who told the first time. And so because I wasn't the kind of child who did that, a part of my mission in life now is to encourage every other child who's abused. You tell, and if they don't believe you, you keep telling. You tell everybody until somebody listens to you. If nothing else, that's part of something good that came out of that experience for me. Because I don't want it to happen to another child. I don't want another child to be afraid of saying, this is what happened to me. I was living with my mother and living under circumstances that a lot of young children have to deal with today. And if you'd asked me at the time if we were poor, I probably would have said no, because when you are living it and you don't know anything else, you think that's the way life is. I think that success is a process, and I believe that my first Easter speech at the age of 3.5 was the beginning, and that every other speech, every other book I read, every other time I spoke in public was a building block. So that by the time I first sat down to audition in front of a television camera, what allowed me to read it so comfortably and be so at ease with myself at that time was the fact that I'd been doing it a while. If I'd never read a book or I'd never spoken in public before, I would have been traumatized by it. So the fact that we went on the air with the Oprah Winfrey Show in 1986 nationally, well, it's because I've been being myself since I was 19. I would not have been able to be as comfortable with myself had I not made mistakes on the air and been allowed to make mistakes on the air and understand that it doesn't matter. There's no such thing to me as an embarrassing moment. If I tripped and fell, if my bra strap showed, if I fell flat on my face, there's no such thing as an embarrassing moment because I know that there is not a moment that I could possibly experience on the air that somebody else hasn't already experienced. It's no big deal. I can't be embarrassed. I can't be embarrassed. You can laugh at yourself and you can make a mistake, and it's not the end of the world. You don't have to be perfect. I truly believe that thoughts are the greatest vehicle to change power and success in the world. Everything begins with thoughts. I mean, the chairs that we're sitting in, the room that we're in, all started because somebody thought it. I thought up The Color Purple for myself. I read the book. When I heard that there was going to be a movie, I started talking it up for myself. I felt it so intensely that I had to be a part of that movie. I really do believe I created it for myself. I wanted it more than anything in the world and would have done anything to do it. It was all, I think, a part of the process of growth for me to recognize it can be done.
I had done a movie called Beloved, a book written by Toni Morrison. I worked on that movie for 10 years, and then it came out and it bombed. For the longest time, when I would read that people had said it was a bomb, I would get clutched, because I couldn't even say the word bomb. I couldn't say it failed. It felt like at the time one of the biggest, disasters of my career. It felt like the saddest thing. It sent me into depression. And what I learned from that experience is what we talk about in the book, is you take the thing that was the worst thing for you, the thing that was the challenge, and you begin to look at what it was that you really benefited, or how you benefited from that thing. And what I learned from that Beloved experience, because at the time that it bombed, I went into depression about it. My former depression was eating macaroni and cheese for breakfast every morning. And about 40 pounds later, I was talking to a friend and they were saying, "So why did this take you down so?" And I said, "Because I just wanted everybody to feel about that movie the way I felt about it. I wanted people to understand that you could be an enslaved person, come through that, and still have love." And the person said to me, "Well, I felt that." I said, "Well, I actually wanted millions of people, not just you." And then I decided that from all of my work going forward, and that was in 1998 when it bombed, I would no longer be attached to the work. I would allow myself to detach from it and just offer whatever I was doing, offer it. I say, this is what I'm doing. This is what I would love for you to receive it in the manner in which I'm giving it. If you don't receive that, then the joy for me was in the giving of it. This is the other thing I think that's really important, and I've come to on my own. I just realized that you reach a point where you have to ask yourself, what is enough? What is enough? And, I live a really huge life surrounded by, and it was actually a goal of mine when I was first doing The Color Purple in 1985. I remember writing in my journal then that if I ever get enough money, I want a house surrounded by beautiful things. And so I have done that. I have achieved that over and then over and then over. And I look around and I say, okay, you got enough. It's okay. I'm satisfied. I have all the things that I need. And so now I can focus on how do I take what I know, what I've gained, who I've become in the world, and how can I use that in service to other people in a way that makes them happier. And that, for me, that's part of what this book is about. This is the thing. I remember years ago, during the Beloved period, actually, when I was being interviewed by a reporter, and then about a decade later, I ran into the same reporter. I didn't remember her, but she remembered me, and she said, yeah, I remembered you. I interviewed you during the Beloved. I said, oh, that was a time. And she said, but no, what I realize is that you're the same person, you just have become more of yourself. And I thought, I actually think that's right. I think that one of the reasons why I am so proud of myself is not just because I escaped apartheid Mississippi and was able to get an education and become successful in life. It's because I have paid attention. I have paid attention. I am a great observer of my life and the lives of other people. And every day on that show, it was a classroom for people who were viewing, but it was a major classroom for me. And so I learned by watching other people's dysfunction, their struggles, their triumphs, celebrating in their joys, about the meaning of life and what it means to live a full an engaged life. And I learned that one of the most important things that everybody is looking for is to be validated, to be seen, and to know that they matter. And that no matter who you are, Barack Obama, the first time he came on the show as senator, he finished the interview and said, "Is that good? Is that all right? Good for you?" Beyonce, when she finished teaching me how to twerk, said, "Was that all right?" When I interviewed a woman who had lost 3 of her children to cancer, she said, "Did I do okay?" And what I realized is in one form or another, at the end of every conversation, people would say that. And I started to see the pattern and understood that what people really want is to know, did you hear me? Did you see me? And did what I say mean anything to you? And in recognizing that, I was able to become a better interviewer because I can give you that thing that you're looking for. I know how to help you be better in that seat, just as you're doing with us here today. Be better in that seat and tell your story in a way that when you leave here, you got what you wanted. I would say be easy with yourself. Be easy with yourself. And it's all gonna work out, because one of the primary, I think, principles that has led me to success is intention. And I think clarifying the intention based on the principles that we set out and the guidelines and manual work that we set out in the book, clarifying the intention, your reason for being. I mean, we talk in the book about asking yourself the question about what you're willing to live for and what you're willing to die for, and getting clear on that, because that is really the real work of your life. Everybody's going to find a job that's going to be able to bring you money and you're going to be successful. You're going to get all of that. But why were you really brought here? By whatever means you think you got here. Why are you really here? You've come here to serve and you've come here to love. And how are you going to use your service in love, first and foremost to yourself? Because the work is not to make yourself perfect, but to start to begin to make yourself whole. How are you going to do that? How do you fill yourself up to be a whole person, a full person of kindness, of grace, and being able to offer that into the world, along with all the wonderful skills you all are gonna have? How do you offer that into the world in service that lifts you up and allows you to meet the rising of your life and lifts other people up? And so changing the paradigm to how, not just what am I gonna do, but how am I going to serve? How am I going to serve? And my prayer for myself since I was a little girl was, God, use me. God, use me. And whether you believe in my God or your God or no God, the question is, how can you be used in service? With all this work you're putting in, all this stuff that you're doing that for what? You're doing that to be of service. First and foremost to yourself, your family, and your community. And then how do you push that out into the world? And if the world is 20 people, 20,000 people, 20 million people as it was with me every day, it does not matter. Because what really matters is that you're building legacy. And this is the greatest definition of legacy I ever heard. When I opened my school in South Africa for young girls, one of them is here today, who's now grown in law school and starting work in New York. But I opened that school for girls who were like me. I grew up in rural Mississippi, no running water, no electricity. My grandmother and I on what I thought was a farm, and I went back and realized it was just an acre. It was so big in my mind, I went back, oh, this is not a farm. This is actually just a yard. When I was growing up there, I had a dream for myself. I remember being out with my grandmother washing clothes in a big iron pot, because we didn't have a washing machine, of course, and her putting clothes on the line and saying, you better watch me, because one day you're gonna have to learn how to do this for yourself. And I will tell you that the voice inside myself that all of us have, that feeling, that spirit, that inner voice, that voice at 4 years old said, this is not gonna be my life. But I had sense enough not to tell my grandmother. I had sense enough not to say that out loud, but I could feel inside myself, I'm not gonna be doing this. And it turned out to be true. But what I do know now is what Maya Angelou told me about legacy. When I came back from opening the school, I said, Maya, the school is going to be my greatest legacy. These girls are amazing, and I can't even tell you, the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy is going to be the great. She said, you have no idea what your legacy is going to be. I said, oh no, I'm telling you, it's going to be these girls. You should have been there. You should have seen it. She was making biscuits at the time, and she put the dough down. When Maya puts the dough down, get back. She said, I said you have no idea what your legacy will be, because your legacy is not your name on a building. Your legacy isn't even the lives of those girls, it's every life you touch. Your legacy is every life you touch, and you are building your legacy here and now. So everything that you do going forward, every life that you encounter and experience, and the way you treat yourself and the way you treat other people is building your legacy. So think about it in terms of the bigger goal and meeting the rising that is there waiting for you. And the fact that you've gotten here and all the things that you had to overcome means you've already won. So go forward, that's what I say. One of the challenges, especially when you're going through anything, is not allowing the emotions to take over you, and to be able to separate the feeling from who you know yourself to be, and being able to have that little space in between where you can be the observer of the feeling. When you can observe the feeling and not be absorbed by the feeling, you can feel it and then take the wheel for yourself. It's just like, when I was 8 years old, I memorized Invictus. And at the time, I was reciting "Out of the night that covers me, black as a pit from pole to pole." I didn't know what the hell I was talking about at 8 years old. But I did know that the last stanza, "I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul," that had meaning for me, even at 8 years old. And so as I've grown into myself, become more of who I was meant to be, the mastery of that comes when you can separate those emotions and feelings from the who of who you are. So the Oprah Winfrey Show was on for 25 years, was the most successful television talk show in the history of all television. I did it for 25 years, never missed a day, never missed a day. And the reason it was the most successful is because around the second year of it, I changed the motivation and intention of the show. I went from just trying to be a talk show competing with everybody else in the rat race of ratings, and literally sat down with my producers and said, how do we use this show as a force for good? How do we, and that came after doing 3 shows in a row. I'd done a show with the Ku Klux Klan, and I realized in the middle of that show that I wasn't helping anybody. I thought I was exposing their vitriol, when in fact, they were using their appearance on the show to recruit other members. And so I could feel that going on in the audience. And then another show that we did on people who had infidelities, and a husband had come on with his wife and his girlfriend. The producers were so happy that they got the husband and the wife and the girlfriend. And in the middle of that show, the husband humiliated his wife and said, she's pregnant, on national television. And when that happened, I was so ashamed that had happened on my platform. I said, this will never happen to me again, and I will never do a show like the Klan again. And so my producers were like, well, what are we gonna do? I said, we're gonna turn this around, and nobody bring me an idea that you are not clear about what the intention is. And we are gonna only do shows that come from the intention of how can we best serve the audience. And I'm telling you, after every show, there was a meeting to say, did we serve the intention? Did we do what we say we wanted to do? And how can we do it better the next time? And that is when the joy, the happiness, the level of satisfaction, the level of pleasure And everything changed for me in doing that show. And it also, when the numbers took off, all sort of happened at the